Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. If you want to know what happens to your portfolio when the chairman of the Federal Reserve is, well, basically pushed out the door, you have to look at the spring of 2026.
Right, because we have a fascinating stack of sources today detailing that monumental transition from Jerome Powell to Kevin Warsh.
And we really need to set the stage here, because these DOJ and Treasury leaks are highly politically charged.
Yeah.
Just as a quick reminder to you listening, we absolutely do not take political sides on this show. We're just neutrally reporting the facts to figure out how this shift, along with, AI and crypto, is fundamentally rewriting the rules for your business.
Yeah, and it is a monumental transition, but the context surrounding it is, it's incredibly messy. The executive branch and the DOJ are heavily involved here.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Powell's exit isn't just a quiet retirement. On April 3rd, 2026, Judge Boasberg completely blocked a DOJ probe into Powell.
Right, that was over the $2.5 billion headquarters renovation.
Exactly. And the judge explicitly stated there was zero evidence of fraud. But then, on top of that, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is actively discouraging Powell from staying on the board. He's basically warning him not to linger as some sort of shadow Fed chair.
And the timing of this institutional friction is just brutal for Warsh. I mean, the central bank is consumed by internal politics right when a massive external shock hits.
Because of the escalating conflict in the Middle East, oil has surged past $100 a barrel, so Warsh inherits this immediate blazing crisis.
Which puts him in a really difficult spot on day one.
Right. It makes me think Warsh might ironically have to hike interest rates on his very first day. It's like a strict new principal handing out day one detentions just to prove to the bond market that he's tough, He has to establish absolute trust before he can eventually cut rates.
That is a great analogy. That mechanism of building instant credibility is essential to understand what analysts are calling Warsh's Hawkish-Dovish Paradox.
Hawkish-Dovish Paradox.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is his ultimate goal. He wants a lean, disciplined balance sheet, but eventually low 3% interest rates. He wants to move to the rules-based Taylor rule.
Okay, wait. I have to push back on this. How can the Fed drastically slash rates to fund massive government spending without, instantly triggering a 1970s-style inflation spiral?
Well, that brings us to Warsh's core thesis, which is artificial intelligence. He views AI hyper-efficiency as the ultimate disinflationary anchor.
Oh, because AI allows companies to produce way more output with drastically less overhead.
Precisely. It naturally forces prices down across the broader economy. And that downward pressure is the economic cover the Fed needs. It justifies printing cheap capital for massive sovereign industrial policies.
Policies like the DOE's Genesis mission or that $500 billion Project Stargate AI data center in Abilene, Texas. But funding those reveals a pretty glaring mechanical problem.
The plumbing.
Yeah, the plumbing. We have a $36 trillion national debt, and traditional global buyers aren't exactly lining up for U.S. Treasuries anymore. To finance this AI boom, the Fed needs an entirely new system.
Which is where crypto shifts from a speculative asset to fundamental government plumbing. The strategy emerging from these sources involves regulated stablecoins essentially being mandated to buy U.S. Treasuries.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. By regulating stablecoins, the government is brilliantly creating a massive captive buyer for U.S. debt out of thin air. Meanwhile, Bitcoin gets legitimized as digital gold.
And this triggers a brutal capital rotation. The ZIRP era, those zero interest rate policy days, is completely dead.
So the zombie software startups that survived just by borrowing cheap money without ever turning a profit?
They die out. The days of subsidizing asset-light software are gone. Capital is aggressively rotating into halo stocks-heavy assets, low obsolescence.
Like the companies making the actual silicon.
Exactly, like Micron and ASML, or the nuclear grid providers like Constellation that are powering these massive data centers.
So what does this all mean for you? Your big takeaway from this deep dive is that pure software is no longer the safe haven. If you want to protect your capital from fiat debasement, because they are going to keep printing money for this AI build-out, your strategy has to pivot toward physical infrastructure and hard assets.
It's a total rewiring of how the global economy works.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over. If traditional buyers of our national debt are stepping back, and regulated stablecoins step up as the primary buyers keeping the government funded, does the ultimate control of the global economy silently shift away from traditional central bankers and directly to the hands of the tech companies issuing those digital tokens? Something to really think about.